everybody. Welcome, welcome. We have such a good conversation happening today. I am so thrilled to have all of you in here. I am reporting from not my office. I'm visiting family, which is why I have like a little bit of a different background than usual, but we're going to roll with it today. And come on in. Everyone get situated and settled. I know a bunch of you have been waiting with bated breath for us to start. And if you haven't been to one of our sessions before, what you want to do now, and Damaris, you've already just gone above and beyond, is put yourself in the chat. Let's see where you're coming from, what it looks like outside your window. I know we're experiencing some weather in some places, so let's see who is here. And let's talk about what we are discussing today, which is a really exciting conversation. I know a lot of people in our wonderful community have been looking forward to it. We're talking all about how to land a book deal. And if you don't know me, let me take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Beth, and I am founder and CEO of a really incredible organization called Wanderful. I know a lot of you are Wanderful members who are joining or part of our email list, but we also have a bunch of newbies all the time. So I want to take a minute to introduce you to what we do. We are an international community of women all over the world who love to travel. We have content creators in our group, we have small business owners, and we have travel lovers. We have hubs all around the world where you can connect with other women when you travel. We have an online membership community where you can actually ask questions and get support. We have events that we run every year, including the WITS Travel Creator Summit and the Bessie Awards. We do a lot to really support and help women when they're traveling the world to have better connection with each other, better support, better resources, a more connected experience than I think you could just do on your own. And that's really where Wanderful started. So one of the things that we love to do is host events like this one. A lot of times they talk about travel, our favorite topic, but sometimes we also talk about things like this, which is how to build a business, how to grow your space as a creator. We have a lot of people who have wanted to leave a 9-to-5 and move into a travel focused career. And we talk a lot about how you can do that. And so the session today is really leaning into that, is we have so many different content creators and builders in our community that have gotten deals lately, actual book deals, and myself included. We'll talk about that. And we thought, it'd be really neat to just shed some light and really discuss, how did we get to that space? How can you get to that space? How can you make your voice really heard all around the world? So before we do our full panel intro, and we have so many great things to talk about today, I want to give you a quick shout out. If you're not a member of Wanderful yet, you absolutely have to get on board. It's very easy. You'll get an email to follow up after this. It's just sheswanderful.com/join. You'll get access to all of our hubs around the world. We also run global meetups, which I forgot to mention. This is a picture of our recent trip to Mexico City that we had 40 women go on, and it was just really, really fun. And we did all sorts of things together, and we do a lot of trips and experiences like that. And it's really cheap. It's like $9 a month to be a member. So there is absolutely no reason not to sign up. And we'd love to see you in our community. And I see a lot of great people here today, which is so awesome. I'm so glad that you all are part of this. As you know, we love to make this into a conversation. So I have questions I'm going to be asking. We have all sorts of topics to bring up. But also, if there are things that you want to know, continue to drop them in the chat. We'll shout you out. We'll ask the questions and we'll help. Now, speaking of all of this, why am I hosting a session on how to get a book deal? Because I got a book deal. I have a book coming out in March. It's called Wander Woman. It is a part manifesto, part solo travel guide for women all around the world who are thinking about going out there and really not sure what to do next. And my travel loving friends all admit that this is not just a book for newbies, it's also for the veterans. We talk a lot about your identity in the world and who you are and how that changes and the complicated feelings that come of that and some of the best ways to really make the most of a travel experience. And so, of course, I have to give it a shout out. It is going live on March 5th. Pre-orders are open. You can learn more about it at thewanderwomanbook.com. I'm really super proud of it. And with that, I have two amazing people who actually agreed to come on this virtual stage and talk not about my book, but about the book publishing process in general, so we can give you all as much information and resources about how you might do this for yourself. What are the things that you should know if you ever wanted to write something of your own, if you ever thought about publishing something and actually landing a book deal and making that part of your career or part of your life, how to actually go about doing that. So I want to bring two wonderful, wonderful women to the stage. They are my own editorial team, which have been amazing, amazing people to work with. And I'm so proud to introduce them to all of you. And let me do, before I bring them on stage, a couple of bragging points, because I want to tell you about who they are. So let's read some bios. So first we have Amaryah Orenstein. She is the founder of Go Literary Agency. She's always loved to read and provide sometimes unsolicited editorial advice. And as a literary agent, she's thrilled to help writers bring their ideas to life. She's drawn to narrative nonfiction and memoir, but enjoys any book that connects the reader to its characters and evokes thought and feeling. She's originally from Montreal. She earned a bachelor's at McGill before coming to the US to pursue graduate studies in American history. She's got a master's from Ohio University's Contemporary History Institute, a PhD from Brandeis. She serves as co-president of the Boston chapter of the Women's National Book Association. And we are so thrilled to have her with us. Welcome, Amaryah.
Hi, thank you so much. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here. And what a wonderful community. And I'm seeing a whole bunch of Canadians pop up on this. So a special hello to all of you, but welcome to everybody. And thanks for having me. P.S. I'm no longer the co-president of Boston because I live in New York.
Is there something that you say to fellow Canadians that's like an inside thing? Like you're like, hey, hey, Canadian,
Hey. No.
Hey,
no, we just have better potato chips than you guys do.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Love it. Well, let's bring your second co-partner into this as well. It is my editor, Hannah Robinson, who Amaryah is responsible for finding, actually. We'll talk through that whole process. Hannah is an accomplished editor with years of experience in the publishing industry. She holds the position of editor at Grand Central Balance, a prestigious publishing house that focuses on nonfiction works in the areas of health, wellness, and personal development. She's known for her meticulous attention to detail, keen editorial eye, and ability to guide authors in bringing their ideas to fruition. And I can double stamp that. Her passion for literature and dedication to excellence have earned her a reputation as a top editor in her field. In her spare time, she loves reading, hiking, and exploring the city's diverse cultural offerings. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, everyone. It's so exciting to meet you all and to be here and get to talk with Beth and Amaryah. And gosh, I'm just so excited that we get to have this conversation today. Thank you.
I'm so thrilled to have both of you. And I know when we were planning this conversation, we were talking about how there is so much to say about this topic. And I had sent you some questions in advance, and they were all joking like, oh, this is going to take forever. We're going to spend 2 hours just on one topic. And so we're going to try to be as concise as we can, sort of, but also I want to make sure everyone gets all the details that they want. And I see some really good comments already. Thanks, Anu. She's already reading the galley copy of Wonder Woman, and it's so good. Yay! So Anu has, and there's a few people here actually who are published authors that are in this chat. I know we have Anu Taranath, who wrote a really awesome book called Mindful Guilt Trips. I'm having a pregnancy moment, Anu. And we have, let's see, somebody else was in here that I noticed that's a book writer. So I'm so glad to see published authors that are joining as well. And feel free to give your thoughts and perspectives too. For everyone who's new to the experience, Amaryah and Hannah, what I'd love for you to do is just kind of take us through the process. I don't know which one of you feels like you want to do that more, but just from the beginning. Thank you. Beyond Guilt Trips. Oh my gosh, why did I do that? I'm so sorry. This is one of my most favorite books. Beyond Guilt Trips, Mindful Travel in an Unequal World. It's absolutely amazing. You all should go out and get it. It's a marvelous work of a book. Let's talk about the process from thinking about, I want to start a book, to actually publishing it. What does that general process look like for somebody to get to those points?
Hannah, you want me to start since somebody would come to me first and then I'll turn it over to you?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. So as an agent, I'm kind of the first step in the getting a book deal process. So, for example, Beth came to me as a referral. An existing client said, I'm working with someone, I think you would really like her. Would you mind taking a look at her proposal? But, if you don't have that direct connection, the way you would find me or somebody like me is through a query search. And how technical do you want me to get? Do you want me to tell people where to go to find, I'll just very quickly give you my best advice for that is to check out a site called Publishers Marketplace or Poets and Writers. And it has a really good section on literary agents, and it tells you what kind of work they represent, because we don't all represent the same thing. There's some of us who only do fiction, some people who only will do children's literature, some people who will only do nonfiction. And it's a little bit of a detective game, finding the right agents for you. But those two sites, I think, are the best sites you can consult for narrowing down your list of appropriate agents, and also looking at the back of books that you loved. So for example, if you had a copy of Beth's book, you would look there and see, oh, Hannah's her editor. Amaryah represented this book. Like, oh, she likes travel books. I should reach out to her. And so the way that process works is a little bit different for every agent, but you would find out what a particular agent's instructions are and follow those instructions. So I'll just speak about myself. For example, I only accept queries through Query Manager. So you would go to my Query Manager page, and there's a little questionnaire, and then fill in, the most important part, which is the query letter, which is pitching your book. And it's not, dear Amaryah, I've written this awesome book, you should work with me, which I laugh, but I get hundreds of those a week. But it's really positioning your book, kind of giving me a dramatic hook and making me want to read that book, as opposed to telling me I ought to read that book. And so if I'm interested, I then request, if you're writing, I'm assuming anybody in this space would be writing nonfiction. So you would have a book proposal and 2 sample chapters. And we can talk a little bit, if you want, about what the proposal looks like. But we'll kind of go through the process first, and we can come back to the nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. And, as an agent, my job is to fall in love with the word, right? I can't represent something that I don't love. But also to understand that there's a market for it and figure out how to position it to kind of break it out as widely as possible. And, assuming all of that works and we have a great conversation and we decide that we're ready to work with one another, which is kind of, I see it as a very personal relationship, but also it's taking a risk on both sides, right? You need to trust me that I will do well for your book, but I also need to trust you that, I need to take a risk in thinking I can sell this book. There's no guarantees in this industry ever. And I think anyone who tells you, oh yeah, 100% I can get you a book deal is like a little bit of a red flag. Because unfortunately there just is no 100% in this industry. But assuming all of that goes well and you've kind of done your due diligence and you don't think I'm insane and we decide to work together, my next step is more often than not to edit the proposal and edit the sample chapters, or if you're writing fiction, to edit the manuscript and work on story development. Even if I've acquired something that I love, that I think I can sell, I usually have notes. I never send something out without at least one round of editing. And then my job becomes that same kind of matchmaking that you did at the beginning to find me. I then have to take your project and figure out who I think would be the most appropriate editors. And, I'll put it out there bluntly. For me, that is not necessarily the person who offers you the most money. Yes, the money is great and we all want it and that's wonderful. But my job is to make sure that at the end of the day, you end up with a product that you are proud of and that has carried out your vision or even improved on the vision that you started out with. And so I start with a list of editors who I think, again, we'll use Beth's book as an example. I curate a list of editors who I think would be interested in women's issues, in travel, in, whatever kind of category I could put this book into. And I make that list, and I usually start with 10 to 12, sometimes 15 first round editors who I think would be the most appropriate. And I pitch the work very much in the way that a writer first pitched the book to me to sell it. And then, if you're lucky, someone is interested. And if you're really lucky, more than one person is interested. And then, I can put the author on the phone with those different editors and we can talk about, my favorite question to ask an interested editor is not just, like, what do you like about the book, but what don't you like about the book? What improvements are you going to make? And Hannah can speak more to kind of how she makes those judgments. But I will say, in fairness, not every editor wants to give all that away up front, because they don't want you to take their ideas, sign with someone else and not get it. But you kind of get a sense that, oh, this is a person I can trust. This is someone who I think has a great vision or understands my vision for the book. And then I talk with my clients about what the best options are. I am not the decision maker. I do not sit in the driver's seat. I never, ever would try to do that. I am an advisor. I am a counsel. I am the matchmaker. I will tell you what I think would be the best, but I would never say to an author, this is who you have to work with. This is what you have to do. Make these changes. I absolutely insist. All of this is kind of a conversation. And I am here as someone who has insider knowledge, who can kind of tell you what questions to ask and how to assess what is best for you, but I cannot make those decisions for you. And no agent, well, technically no agent can, but no agent should.
Yeah. And let me take a step back here too, because one thing that there were so many unknowns for me in this process, and just kind of like learning it for the first time. I know the two of you have done this like so many times. It's like, right, it's like writing a book. But for me, it was like, oh, I have to have an agent. Like, what's an agent? Like, what does an agent even do? Like, why would I need, like, can't I just pitch an editor? And then I found out that actually, like, a lot of editors won't even consider your work unless you have an agent pitching on your behalf. So like, they won't even look at it unless it's been vetted by somebody else who's been in this industry, who says, this is actually a good book. You should take a look at this. So the very first process is just, if you do decide you want to get a deal and not self-publish, and I know we'll talk about that too, like the first thing you have to do is kind of like create your little, like you said, query, which is like not long. It's like, I was like a few paragraphs. It's like
never ever be more than 1 page. And
honestly, okay, yeah, good to know.
Shorter,
no scrolling.
150 words.
And you submit queries, and you just look for an agent, and then that agent, once you sign with that person, what they basically do is they work on commission. So whatever you make, they're going to make a portion of that. They are your representation in a lot of ways. Like, they're the ones who are kind of like looking at the agreements that you're signing. They're the ones that are like actually helping you find this deal. And then they're putting that book out. So like you were saying, Amaryah, then there's this whole process of your proposal, which is like a pretty long, I mean, we probably worked on that proposal for like months before we even submitted it.
Yeah.
Because
and I will say that was not one of my slower ones. I mean, I've had clients that I've had working on proposals for 2 years. Because again, so many of you, and rightfully so, have full-time jobs. Writing is something that you do in your free moments, really early in the morning, really late at night. But also the proposal is so crucial to selling the book that if it's really not airtight in this competitive market, you're not going to get that book deal, or you're not going to get as good a deal or land the best publisher for your work if you don't put the time and effort into that document. And I say that I've had people who've come to me not knowing that writing nonfiction, they need a proposal. And if there's any fiction writers out here, you don't need a proposal. So you can just like count your lucky stars.
Don't you usually have to have like a full manuscript though?
You have to have
ready to go. Okay, well, so there you go. You have to write the book if you're in.
You have to write the book in advance and hope that somebody then loves it enough to take it on. But the proposal, it's really worth the effort you put into it.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that, because I think it'll be good for us to break down like what's in a good proposal and what should you do. So then, Hannah, basically you're on the receiving end where Amaryah reaches out to you with a proposal. And then what happens next?
I am. So it's like, I know it's a relay. It's a village. We're building more and more people into it, right? So I get an email or a call from Amaryah pitching this amazing book that she's super excited about. And that's where kind of the twofold component of my role as an editor starts to kick in. So I represent the publishing house. It's my job to be both kind of a venture capitalist and kind of a book midwife. Those are the two hats that I wear. So when I'm getting pitches in from agents, I'm thinking as a venture capitalist. I have to make bets on behalf of the publishing house about projects that I'm head over heels for, that I think can do well in the market and will be profitable for us. And that's that uncomfortable juxtaposition of creativity and drive and commerce that publishing kind of encounters all the time. So I'm reading this proposal, I'm falling in love with Beth's voice, her ideas. I'm out looking at the market, seeing what's out there already, really thinking about it. That's where that comes to. When I reach that decision for myself that this is something I want to pursue, this is a project that I want to take on, I share with my colleagues, and the village becomes even a little bit bigger. So my marketing director reads it, my publicity director reads it, my publisher reads it. I present it to the broader imprint and division, and we have conversations around, is this something that we think we can take on for the list? If everyone's aligned, everyone's excited, we put together numbers, and I can make an offer to Amaryah, and that offer would be the advance, as well as some other deal terms. And then we have a very business conversation about it. In the middle of all of that, I get to have a call with Beth, which is basically the author's job interview, right? Like, you are there, I'm asking you tons of questions, I'm putting Beth in the hot seat. The author's
I think I asked her like way more questions to like, I don't think it felt like an interview for me. I was like, Jenna, I have questions for you.
More like
I loved it. I was
more
so
like a blind date than an interview, because they're both asking each other a lot of questions.
That's
and
fair.
I'm just
That's fair. No, but it's that moment where we're gonna see if we're aligned, right? Like, is this a project that, yes, we're super excited about? I'm selling you on what I can do as an editor. We're coming to a meeting of the minds creatively. I'm asking you all sorts of questions on behalf of my colleagues. And it's a really fun part of that process, and not one to underestimate as part of your decision making. And Beth and Amaryah know better what happens behind the scenes after those meetings, but that's a really critical part of the conversation, right? Like, you got to go home and kind of assess your date options.
Exactly. It's a debrief behind the scenes. As soon as the three of us get off the phone, Beth and I call each other and we're like, what did you think? What did you think? Oh, I like when she said this. Oh, I wasn't really sure about this. Or, she wants to kill off my main character, and I'm really involved with the main character. I'm taking from a different conversation, but those are the kinds of things that we assess and see, is this the right editor?
Exactly. So far what's happened to get us to this place is, like, Beth, you've queried Amaryah. You guys have worked together on a proposal. That proposal has come to me. I've talked about it with all of my colleagues. We're getting excited about it. I'm talking about it with Beth and Amaryah as the author and the agent. We're all getting excited about it. And when all of those pieces align, I get to make you an offer. And hopefully that offer gets accepted. When that happens, we have a book together. And that's the kickoff of that other hat that I have, right? So far we've been in kind of venture capital mode. Now I get to switch into book midwife mode, where it's my role to help the author realize the best version of that book for the audience, the way that we're both seeing it, honoring their voice, their ideas, really ushering it into the world in a couple of ways. One is working closely in the words themselves, right? So, like, what's on the page? What's your reading experience going to be? Have we settled that? And then the logistics of it, where we have to go from, a Google Doc and a Word document all the way into a physical published product. And there are a lot of steps in that process that I, as the editor, help manage and coordinate teams. We think about pitching to our sales reps. We think about our marketing and publicity campaigns. We're looking at the actual transition of words from that Word document to something that looks really polished, like what you get at your local indie or at Barnes & Noble, or that comes in the mail from Amazon. All of those pieces fall under my purview as the editor. And that's kind of the long trajectory from that first kernel that, Beth, you have, winding through all the way to me, and then eventually to all of you on the receiving end who can purchase a copy when the book goes on sale.
And I think one of the really enlightening parts of this process for me has been how much, and like, I come from, and I think a lot of you watching come from a space of, or maybe from more of a business space. I know I do. And I think for me, like, as an entrepreneur, I was surprised how much this felt like a business incubator, but the book was the business. You know, it was like, it's not just about writing. Of course, writing is like the big part of it and the bread and butter, but it's also about like, well, who's going to read this and what are they going to get out of it? And what is the message that you're giving them? And like, it becomes so much more about like, what is the impact that this book is having? How are you reaching people? And like, how are you making sure that message is being communicated correctly, which is very different than just like, I'm going to just write and then I'm going to throw it out into the world, you know? And like, and I actually found that like really exciting and engaging and interesting to think about like, what is it that I want to say, like in this moment of saying something, and how do I want people to receive that? And what do I want people to do with that? And like, what do I want to happen, you know, along this process? And I don't know if that's something that like you look for or you experience with your authors, but I'm really curious, like, what are the things when you are looking at these proposals, or Amaryah, in your case, when you're like helping make the proposal, like what things stand out? What makes like a really strong book proposal versus something that's like, it's good writing, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be a book that people are going to want to buy.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that Hannah's two titles kind of encapsulate perfectly what we're looking for in good proposals, is that they need to both, you know, really speak to the art. The writing needs to shine. It really, you know, you need to tell a story. I don't just want to be like, I don't want you to talk at me, number one, but also we need to see the business part of it. And that's why the proposal is so important, because really at the end of the day, the proposal is your sales pitch. It's not here's a summary of my book, but it's really a look at the market and positioning yourself in the market. So like, what books would you sit next to on a shelf? Who are you in conversation with, or who are you, you know, answering to, or what are you adding to this category that has not yet been said? That's kind of the most important thing. And that's how, and also, who are you? You know, not everybody could write Wonder Woman. When you're writing nonfiction, one of, you know, for better, for worse, one of the main things we look at is your platform. If Beth had 3 followers and, you know, didn't know any of you, it would have been much harder to sell this book, as beautifully written as it is and as important as it is. If you don't have a direct link to the audience you're trying to reach, I probably can't sell your book. And you know, I've had to turn down many people for that exact reason. They have really interesting things to say and are writing them in nice ways, but they are not the people to write them. So, you know, Beth started this by introducing me and my academic background. I have a PhD in history. You know, I call myself a recovering academic. I certainly am. I no longer work in academia. But if you were to come to me with, you know, the new definitive history of X, and you have never studied X, and you don't belong to, you know, the National Society for the History of X, or whatever it is, you're not an authority on that topic. You may have wonderful opinions and great things to say, but I probably can't sell that book, and I probably won't. You know, that's not something I could consider. If you are not somebody with a platform in that area, that's really hard for us.
Yeah, no, Amaryah, I'm going to second you on platform, which I know is like the scary word of our industry. But what I'm looking for when I get a proposal in is a really strong, memorable position, right? Like, what's your elevator pitch? I'm going to have to talk about this book to probably a dozen people minimum. How effectively can I get their attention? Will this stand out? And then furthermore, for the reader, what is it that we can encapsulate for them? So I want a really strong, memorable position, and I want a really clear audience to go with it. So like, who is your book for? More importantly, who is your book not for, right? Like, I think the biggest gift you can give to your proposal, to yourself, to your work, is to be really clear with yourself on that answer. It's okay that your book is not for everyone. No book is for everyone.
Not only is it okay, you should never say that your book is for everyone. Like, no publisher, no editor or agent is going to read that and take you seriously if you say it's for all book lovers, it's for everyone. It's not true. There is no one book that's for everyone.
It's not. And take the time to be clear with yourself, right? Like, Beth, you know that your book is for female solo travelers and people who identify as women. Fantastic. We know exactly who we're going after. That's so, so helpful. And we know who we're not going to be chasing with that, That's great. That helps us. That helps you. That helps the book. So clear position, really strong audience clarity. And then that platform, right? Like, how do you connect to that audience? How do you already have an established relationship with the people who are going to be reading this book? What of that do you own? And, people hear platform and they think social media numbers. That's very helpful. It's not exclusively what we're talking about. We think about, like, what's your newsletter? Do you speak? Do you have really strong friendships and connections? Are you part of university? What are your other professional organizations? Beth, you have all of Wanderful, and you have so many irons in the fire, and you have your cafe, and there's such a beautiful richness and diversity to what you brought to the table. I think it's really emblematic of a holistic way of thinking about your platform. So think, as you're putting together a proposal for yourself, think about what it is that you really have access to, that you already control. Who are the people who are asking for something from you? Who do you offer that to? Those are the folks who are going to be your first, most invested audience. So that's more or less what I look for.
Would you then suggest, if there's somebody who's like, I have this idea of this really good book that I want to write, would your first suggestion then be like, hey, examine your network and like work on building your platform first? Or do you feel like that can come with it? Like, at what point should you be like, I'm going to hold off on writing a book and I'm just going to focus on like building a platform?
I think it can be concurrent, personally. Like, I think that is the first question you should start asking, because also that connection with your audience is going to inform the book, right? Like, you're going to get a lot of questions and information about the folks who you want to be serving, right? Like, this book is a service to them. What do they want? What do your readers want to hear from you? You don't know that unless you're interacting with them. I think it can be concurrent, though. If you know you want to be writing a book, start engaging. Start with a newsletter. Start testing your ideas in the real world and see how people respond. What are the reactions? I have authors who often want to wait until their book is on sale to, for example, start a podcast. Well, it'd be better if you started sooner. You already have that audience built in by the time you're ready to sell your book, pitch your book, for people to pre-order. So it's kind of a both and. Better to start earlier and build toward it.
I definitely do think it's tricky because, on the one hand, you want to have that platform and you want to build that platform. On the other hand, to a point that both of you mentioned earlier, it's like sometimes when you're going into the book publishing world, one of the questions that's asked is like, has this already been written? What's your, so it's kind of, it feels like there's a little bit of like a ticking clock here where it's like, well, I want to get this published now because I have this thing to say. But at the same time, like, I recognize that I need to like build up my own credibility and my own audience. So I think that's good advice of like, you can work on both, but like making sure that you have a clear understanding of who that audience is and how you're going to reach them is really important. And Amaryah, I know you were about to say
just a couple of random, because now I've lost track of what order I wanted to say these things in. But for anyone who's sitting here panicking, thinking, oh my God, I need to start my own podcast so I can have a book. You do not need to start your own podcast. Get invited. But what you do need to do is take the time and think about like, okay, what podcasts about the topic I want to write about already exist? And then you would include those in the proposal of, I have already been a guest on, traveladventures.com. I know that I can use my working relationship to get invited again. And here's other podcasts that deal with similar themes or that would be interested in having me. So it's not that you have to go and create these things yourself, but you do have to take the time. And part of it is to show us that there is a market interested, but part of it is also, this dream notion that a lot of writers come to me with, that they are going to get book tours and be paid to fly around the country and speak everywhere, is a pipe dream. It does. Sorry to tell you, but it unless you're John Grisham, it's not really happening. And so what we need to see is that you have this direct link to your audience, that you've already done kind of some of the legwork so that you know what is out there, how to reach the people who will be interested in your book. And we can use any connections that you have, but then also, Hannah and her team and I will step in and help. But we are not, I certainly don't claim to be an expert in solo female travel. So, Beth's job was to kind of provide us with the list of these are all the places that will be interested in my book, and then we can help her make those connections and get, make introductions and get her invited, or do, place articles or whatever it is in the places where she doesn't already know people. But, I myself don't have the time or capacity to generate that list. Beth certainly doesn't have the time and energy, or anyone on her staff to generate that list. The author is an expert in his or her specific topic in a way that we won't be. And so part of that is just helping show us the way so that we can figure out these are the best places to try to place that book, and to grow that audience.
And I think that has actually been one of the most lovely parts of writing this book, beyond like the actual writing part, which of course has its lovely moments as well, but is like just knowing that you have like a team of people working on this with you is so, like, as a writer, and I think for a lot of you watching too, who maybe started in the space of blogging, or you're like a solopreneur or a freelancer where you're used to doing everything yourself, like having a group of people who all are like bought in, on board, and working their angles is so validating and so helpful. And I think to that point, like Amaryah was saying, you're sort of the subject matter expert, but then you also have these like really, really good, strong advisors who can give you ideas of like, okay, this is how, or are already working on it. Like the marketing team at Grand Central Allowance is like, oh, we're going to make some bookmarks. And I was like, wait, you're going to make the bookmarks? Like, you don't need me to do anything. You're just going to like do it. And
you have no idea how excited she was when she found out they would be doing it for her.
I was like, really? You're going to do? Okay. Yeah. Make the bookmarks, but like that, you're not used to that sometimes. And so it is so rich to have like a team of professionals who are working on this with you. And while Amaryah, you're right that like a lot of the stuff, or maybe it was Hannah, I forgot who had mentioned like, it was Amaryah, like being kind of, sent around the world and like able to do, but maybe it's not that glamorous, especially if it's your first book. But what you do get is you get people who have seen this story a million times or have been part of this journey a million times, who can give you really good insight on how to do it and give you ideas. And I think in that way, it's really cool to have like this group of people who have your back, which kind of segues into, I wanted to talk about book deals versus self-publishing, because I think there's pros and cons on both sides. I think there's a lot of self-publishing that's going on nowadays that is great and like helps you get your thing out there. And, from the writer perspective, like having a team with your back is great. Sometimes also you might not want to compromise your vision, in which case like self-publishing becomes like a better option. I was wondering if, I don't know if Hannah wants to take this one, or just kind of talking about the nuances of each and how you might decide which one works better for you, book publishing in the traditional sense or self-publishing on something like an Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit biased because I really do believe in the value of traditional publishing, but like Beth, you said, there are values to both, right? Like you have, for self-publishing, a maximum amount of control. You can move really, really quickly. And of course, you are not beholden to the same kinds of like contracts and royalty structures and things like that. So you get a lot more say. Depending on where you self-publish, you get different amounts of support and help for things like cover design or interior design. There's a lot that goes into the process. The reason I feel strongly about traditional publishing is that you get an enormous amount of support and visibility. You really do get a full team for things that I don't know that authors always realize are really, really important until they've gone down the self-publishing road and realized like, oh, it is really nice to have an entire battery of folks who study cover design, and you have an entire sales force who's weighing in on this to help you get the right package to sell your book, who know the ins and outs of different formats even, right? So like we have your physical edition, which we're creating, and it looks, we have that kind of gold standard professional way of creating the physical edition, but also the ebook edition and an audio edition, right? Like all of those components come together, and it's not something that you as the author have to kind of supervise necessarily. Distribution is the huge one in my mind, because we as publishers are able to get books into every retailer, every sales channel. We have established relationships with anywhere and everywhere that you see a book. That's how the books get there. And as an author, that's a huge advantage for you. When you self-publish, it's much more difficult to get your book in front of people. There aren't the same kinds of opportunities. There aren't the same kinds of distribution channels for you. And, you know, I've talked to folks who self-published first and realized very quickly that they didn't want to have like a third garage in their home full of boxes of their books that they're sending out by hand, right? Like, anyone who's kind of in that like product-based solopreneur space knows that like at a certain moment, you can't scale anymore because you literally just don't have the hours in the day to put things in boxes and send them yourself. Like the UPS truck is not big enough to handle that anymore. And that's something that the publisher 100% takes on. So it's all, you know, not necessarily like the sexiest answers, but they make a massive difference in the ways that your book gets out in the world. And if your goal is to maximize your opportunity to impact the lives of your readers, in most cases, going through a traditional publisher, I think, can help you do that most effectively.
I think I completely agree with Hannah. That said, you know, yes, we're going to reach a point where, you know, the female solo traveler market is saturated and we're not taking books about that anymore, right? There does come a point where kind of the traditional publishing industry has published as many books as it can, or those books aren't selling anymore, and you still have something to say. I think there really are many wonderful publishing opportunities for self-publishing. The one thing I'm going to beg you people, because I have had 5 calls about this in the last 6 months, do not pay a vanity publisher. Anyone who is asking you for $12,000 or $15,000 to do your book and tells you that they're going to provide you with editing and they're going to market your book, it's a scam. Do not fall for it. If you're going to do this yourself, I mean, honest to God, Amazon Create Space, whatever it's called, KDP, they do great work and it won't cost you a penny. But whatever you do, do not give somebody thousands of dollars to do this for you. But you know, that said, yes, there is a reason that a publicist is a full-time job, a sales team is a full-time job, a designer is a full-time job, an editor is a full-time job. If you're self-publishing, you are in charge of doing those things all on your own. I would say, to the extent that you can, that your budget allows you, definitely hire an editor, hire, you know, whoever you can to help make that product as good as it can be, even if you're not submitting for traditional publishing at the end of the day. I think there are opportunities, and it seems like a lot of you have large networks on your own that you could still do significant sales, even if it's not the same kind of distribution that Hannah's talking about with the traditional publisher.
I think those are all really good points. And I think, you know, the main difference that I've seen too, beyond, you know, having the support network, and to your point, Amaryah, you can hire that support network if you're self-publishing. You know, you can hire an editor, you can hire,
and you'll have to make decisions. I mean, it's really expensive to hire everyone, so you'll have to think about, like, what can I do on my own? What am I comfortable with, and where do I really need the help?
Yeah, I also feel like there has been a level of, like, I think for me, this has been really positive, what I'm going to say. For others, it might not be a positive experience, which is having people weigh in on what you're trying to say, which, like, for me, I was very, you know, from the beginning, it was like, this is the message that I want to convey. I don't know if I'm conveying it correctly. I want people to give me feedback on the best way to approach this. And, like, I think I went in knowing that I wanted other people to weigh in. And I think about it a lot in a similar sense to, like, if you had a show, like a TV show, and you had like a relationship with like Nat Geo or something, versus just going on YouTube and like building your own presence and doing things the way you want to do it. And the difference is, you know, at some point there are other people that might disagree with you or might say, no, I really think you should do it this way. And your job is also to kind of to be a listener as well. And like, this is your book, but this is sort of everybody's project now. Versus when you're self-publishing, I think you do get to like hold that to yourself and say like, these are the decisions I'm making for myself. This is the way I want to see it. And I think some people will see it as a positive, as like, I get to do things the way I want. For me, I actually found it to be a real positive to have other people weigh in, because I was like, I want this book to reach people. That's the most important thing for me, is like that my message is being, not just like I want to be famous, but like that my message is being received the way I want people to receive it. And I recognize that I don't know everything, and that having somebody else give me their input, I think is really, really valuable for me. So I enjoyed that. Amaryah, go ahead.
I hate to burst your bubble and make you rethink the whole publishing journey that we've been on, but you don't need me or Hannah to achieve that. What a writing group. The same way you guys, or most of you, belong to Wanderful and you're part of a traveling community, become part of the writing community. There is nothing more important. I in all seriousness, there is nothing more important than that feedback. And I wouldn't want anybody, whether you're self-publishing or querying an agent or whatever approach you're taking to publishing, to send your work out into the world without having had someone else look at it first. And I mean like 20 times. So, you know, whether you join an online writing community just to get critique partners, or you meet some people once a month at a cafe or whatever it is, they don't need to be experts. They don't need to have MFAs. They don't need to be publishing professionals like Hannah and I are. They need to be thinking people whose opinions you trust and who will give you, you know, no offense, not your mom, because she's going to tell you she loves everything, but like people who will give you valuable feedback, who will ask those questions. Absolutely, Beth, it is the most vital, but you don't really, you know, I mean, yes, we're very thankful that you have us, but you could get that elsewhere.
Wait, you mean I didn't have to go through all
you didn't have to go, you didn't have to deal with either one of us.
And like, you know, I so value
like, stop the stop.
Yeah. No, but that humbleness that you came in with, where you're like, I want to understand my reader. I want to work with people who understand the market I'm publishing into and can support me in hitting that. Here's what I got. How am I going to like maximize that? Right? Like that, I think, is the meeting of minds that is helpful. And you can choose to hire an entire battery of outside folks and kind of run it. And in some ways you become your own project manager, right? Like I was describing those two halves, like you can kind of be your own venture capitalist. You can bet on yourself, maximize your own platform, go through those channels. You can manage the team that you accumulate for yourself and bring it together. Or you can find those folks through a traditional lens and get the benefit of that distribution. But the words and the ideas and the authorship too is yours, right? And I want to say too, because it's one of those just kind of like misconceptions about the nonfiction space. Like many authors have writing collaborators, right? Like you have a day job, you didn't study like how to write a book, or you're a really great blogger, but you don't write regularly at like 100,000 words in a go. That's a big shift. And it's very common in nonfiction to have someone come in and support you as an author to realize those ideas the same way that an editor helps you realize those ideas, and everyone kind of works together in that way. So if that's something that you're like, I want even more support, maybe that's a good option for you too. When you're thinking about your writing journey, bring in that community, get that feedback, work closely with someone. There are a lot of great folks in the world who are positioned to help you get the most out of your ideas and really reach the folks who you want to be reaching.
Yeah, that is good advice. Well, and I know we have just really 10 minutes left, everyone. Like flew by. So just an audio reminder for everyone watching. If you have questions, drop them in the chat now. This is your chance to ask whatever you want. You're not going to have many opportunities to just like hit up an editor and a literary agent like right now, but you can. There's a question that just came in that's more about solo travel books. What are some current and new memoirs about women's solo travel? So I know that you didn't say this, but just for the record to say, Wonder Woman and Beyond Guilt Trips both are not really memoirs. They're kind of more like, actually, well, I know Wonder Woman like kind of fits more into the self-help category, I guess. It's like a little bit more like I'm talking to you. I'm not really telling you too much about myself, though it's in there. But for the sake of mentioning, there are Bravish is a book that we're reading in the Wanderful book club right now, which is really cool. It's about a woman who travels after 50. She has a divorce and she goes and travels the world, and it's awesome. We're really enjoying it. And we have a few books in our Wanderful book club that we're doing. I know Finding Katya is one that we're going to be reading next year. I don't know if either of you have been reading much like a solo travel memoir lately, but we can drop. Oh, here's another. Lose Your Mother, A Journey Along the Atlantic Slave Trade is an amazing book. Check it out. Yeah, everyone drop in the chat if there's something that you want to recommend too.
Anytime someone's looking for a solo travel memoir recommendation, I have to plug a book I worked on once upon a time called Unbound. It's by Steph Jagger, and it is a journey of like real personal growth and change. Steph is now a life coach, but she had quit her kind of corporate day job, fellow Canadian, and she goes around the world to ski the highest runs she can in every continent. And it's a really moving, extraordinary story. The travel is great. The personal components are just so moving. It's really stuck with me for years. So highly
I love that. I haven't read that one.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
highly recommend.
I know. That's like a really good review. Awesome. Well, and one thing I wanted to make sure that we hit on this call too is I think, when having these kinds of conversations, especially among women, I think like money is a conversation that people feel awkward about and like don't usually, they kind of skirt around. And I think that is also one of the big differences between getting a book deal and self-publishing is that you're given money in advance, like before the book is even published. And like that makes, as an author, that's like huge because then you can dedicate time knowing that there's money coming in. Can you talk, either of you really talk about like what that process looks like, what people should expect? Like, is there any personal investment that they should be expecting when they have a deal? Like, how does the money side of this work?
Yeah. Amaryah, I can take that one since more or less I can talk a little bit about
it from the agent side.
Yeah. So from the publishing side, an advance is called an advance because it's an advance on the royalties. So when you're an author, every copy that you publish, a certain percentage of the price of that book is something that you earn. What we give you up front is an advance on what we think the book will earn over the course of like 3 years. So that's the way that like when I'm doing the business side of things, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what the market is, how many readers, what's your personal platform. And so advance ranges widely. Like I don't want to kind of give specific numbers because there are folks who, for a variety of reasons, including like what genre you're writing in, how big your personal platform is, like, did you catch it at a really popular moment, or like someone who just, for whatever reason has this vision for it. Your advance money can vary widely. You get it in installments over the course of the process. And it's intended as a way to help authors, Beth, exactly like you were saying, be able to invest in the book, right? We know you're going to need some money up front to be able to just like, pay for childcare or hire a collaborator or hire on an external publicist if you want to go that route. Like there's a lot that goes into the creation of a book. And knowing that, we give you this advance. The way that it works is that you get to keep the money that we give you as an advance. That's your money. What happens is that you have to earn it back through selling the book. So the publisher keeps an account. Every book that you sell, the royalties from that go toward and against the advance we've already paid you. Once you hit that, you get the royalties on the back end. So the ideal in my mind is that we find that sweet spot where you have an advance that allows you to really invest in this book, invest your time, invest your energy that matches our realistic market expectations, and that you get royalties going forward. That's my absolute ideal. I want you to be able to make money on this for the long haul. Yeah.
And I will confess, as an agent, I have done book deals for $0 advance, and I have done book deals for lots and lots of money and anything and everything in between. And I think Beth asked me this question when we first went out on submission. She's like, what should I expect? And I said to her, literally, you can expect anything from $0 to like 999. We have very little way to predict, in the luckiest situation, 10, 12, however many editors are all interested in the same project, and we get a bidding war and that price goes up. Sometimes only one editor is interested. It depends on the size of the house. It depends on the interest in the book. But I will say this. I firmly believe, and I've been doing this for long enough to see it happen, that a book will earn what it was meant to earn. And so if you get a small advance, it doesn't mean that the publishing house doesn't like your book. It doesn't mean that it doesn't think it's going to sell well. Or it might, but you can exceed expectations. And the advantage of getting a smaller advance is that you stand a chance of earning out. So Beth was just saying the advance is basically like a loan, and you have to repay. You have to earn out that loan before you start earning royalties. If you do not do that, your publisher likely sees you as a liability. You're in the red. They are probably not going to want to invest in your next book if you haven't earned out. So if you get $1 million advance and your book sells short and you don't earn that back, yes, you have money in your pockets. That's great. But book 2, book 3, whatever else you've been planning down the road are going to be harder and harder to sell, if not impossible. It really depends. So that's one thing. But again, as an agent, as much as the big advances always feel good and sound nice, it's not as important as finding an editor with the vision to carry out what you're trying to do, who can really, give you that support that Hannah outlined about distribution, about marketing, about, getting your message out there, about helping you make the right connections to, make sure that your book is seen and heard and doesn't just fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Any publisher who can do those things well for you will help you earn the money. So if you only got $5,000 instead of $50,000 in your pocket in advance, and that book goes on to sell 50,000, 100,000 copies, you will make that money. You'll make it on the back end, but you will still make that money, as opposed to getting, a lump sum up front and then falling flat and never seeing another dime and never getting another publishing.
Exactly. I would add to that, Amaryah, I love the way you're putting it. The advance is about the market, not about you as a person. And I know it's really, really easy when someone has put a dollar amount to a creative work that comes out of your soul. That's your whole life's work in so many cases, that it starts to feel like, oh no, is that all that I am worth? And it's like, no. This is about the market. This is not about you as a person. And so whatever that number is, wherever it is in the range, that's what I always tell authors. If it's amazing, it's about the market. If it's a little bit lower than you'd hoped, it's about the market. This is not about you as an individual.
If an editor and his or her team didn't love your work, you wouldn't be getting the offer. That's the part that's about you. What the actual offer is dictated by the market.
Yeah.
But I want to throw something in, because Beth had a little mini question hidden in that, about expenses, costs to authors. So the answer is yes and no. You should never be asked to give money up front, but there are things that authors are expected to cover. So if your book needs an index, for example, it is very rare, almost never, that a publishing house pays for an index. This is what advance money is meant to be used for. If you're using photos in your book and you need permissions and there are costs associated with that, that is more often than not the author's responsibility. Sometimes a publishing house has connections and can get discounts or can get them for free, but sometimes not. But you should not be handed a bill for cover design, for example. If you're working with a traditional publisher, you should not be handed a bill for any, editing, all of that, none of that. The only things really would be permissions. Wait, Hannah, am I forgetting anything? Permissions?
Yeah, permissions are a big one, or just your website.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to expect that you have a website if you don't already. Those are things that your advance can help with, but those are the sort of kind of just Instagram, presence online basics that we would expect. Yeah.
Although some publishing houses will give you an author page on their site and tell you, you don't have to.
You don't have to, but
$1,000 in your own website.
As you can all see, this conversation literally could last all day and into the next day. And I know We have to break it here because we're at an hour. There are a couple of questions that went into the comments, and Amaryah and Hannah, what I'm going to say to you is, if you want to hang tight and like post answers, those answers will still show up publicly. So everyone who's watching this now, if you're watching on YouTube and if you're not, Facebook too and LinkedIn too, the place that you're watching this is the same place where the recording will be. And you'll also be able to see comments in there. So we can get those questions answered still, even though we don't have time for today. But I loved this conversation. Thank you both so much for just like being so open and honest. And I think this is like the talk that so many people need. I mean, when I went into it, I just had no idea what to expect. So I hope that this has given everyone a really good sense of what to expect and what's to come and more. It's been so nice talking with you both.
Thank you so much for hosting this. It's been a lot of fun, and really, this is a dream team. It's such a pleasure to work with these two. And you know, to any of you out there writing a book, I hope you find your own dream team, and we hope I hope to hear from you if you're interested in writing a book.
Seconding
yes,
all of you.
I know. Be careful. You guys are going to get so many inquiries now from people like, well, I heard you were interested. Well, and I hope, you know, if there's more, we can always have more conversations. Yeah, we're seeing some really nice thank you messages in here. So that's so fantastic. And of course, up on the screen, because it's now my job to promote this. So we've got a book coming out. We've all been working really hard on it. It's coming out March 5th. Pre-orders available now. We're actually doing a book club in the Wanderful community. So if any of you are members and want to join us on April 6th, we're actually going to like talk through the book. It'll be tons of fun, but I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here. I hope you got so much out of it. And hopefully we'll see you at our next Wanderful event sometime soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Or morning or evening, wherever you are. Bye for now.